She had only one day to live. That's what the doctors said. One single day before the billionaire's little girl would take her last breath. But no one knew. That night, a poor black boy would walk into that mansion and do something even science couldn't explain. When Amelia Kingsley was born, her father, Charles Kingsley, threw the biggest celebration New York had ever seen. Fireworks painted the sky, and the media called her the miracle baby of Manhattan. Charles was one of the wealthiest men in America, a billionaire who could buy anything he wanted. But fate was cruel enough to remind him that money could never buy what truly mattered. When Amelia turned 8, strange things began to happen. She'd suddenly faint, get high fevers, and sometimes bleed from her nose for no reason. The Kingsleys visited every specialist across the world, London, Tokyo, Switzerland, but the results were all the same. It's a rare genetic disease. There's no cure. Charles refused to accept that. Billionaires don't take no for an answer. He turned his mansion into a private hospital, filled it with machines and nurses, and poured millions into research. Yet, every day, his daughter grew weaker. Then came that dreadful morning. Dr. Harris, the man Charles trusted most, stepped out of Amelia's room with eyes full of sorrow. "Sir," he said softly, "I'm afraid there's nothing left we can do. Her organs are failing. She may not make it through the night." Charles stood frozen. He had survived stock market crashes, corporate wars, and betrayal, but nothing could prepare him for losing his little girl. Inside the room, Amelia lay surrounded by machines that beeped faintly. Her skin was pale, her lips dry. When she saw her father, she smiled faintly. "Daddy, don't look so sad." Charles knelt beside her. "Sweetheart, I'd give up everything. The houses, the cars, the company, just to see you healthy again." Amelia's hand trembled as she touched his face. "You already gave me everything, Daddy." Those words shattered him. He hugged her gently, afraid she might break if he held too tight. That night, thunder rolled across the sky, as if even heaven mourned with him. But while Charles sat by his daughter's bed, praying for a miracle, that miracle was already walking toward his mansion. Far from the bright lights of the city, in a small, broken neighborhood, a woman named Grace sat by her son's side. He was a thin, quiet boy named Malik, only 10 years old, with eyes that seemed to see more than most adults ever could. "Mom," Malik said suddenly, his voice calm but urgent. "We have to go." Grace frowned. "Go? It's pouring outside." "Where?" "To the big house by the hill," he said. "There's a girl there who's dying. God said she's not supposed to die yet." Grace froze. "Malik, what are you talking about?" He stood up, grabbed his small worn-out jacket, and said softly, "If we don't go tonight, she won't see the sunrise." Grace had seen strange things before, how her boy sometimes knew things he couldn't possibly know. But this was different. She didn't understand how or why, but something in his tone made her heart race. Without another word, she took his hand, and together, they stepped into the storm. By the time they reached the Kingsley mansion, lightning split the sky. The guards at the gate immediately stopped them. "This is private property," one of them barked. Grace tried to explain through the rain. "Please, my name is Grace. I used to work here years ago. My son, he says God told him to come. He says he can help the little girl." The guards exchanged confused looks. "What girl?" "The one who's dying," Malik said softly. His voice didn't sound like a child's. It was calm, almost certain. "Her name is Amelia." The guard stiffened. None of them had mentioned the girl's name. One finally said, "Wait here," and ran inside. Moments later, Charles Kingsley himself appeared at the door. His face was pale from exhaustion, his eyes red from tears. "Who are you people? Do you have any idea what's happening inside my house?" Grace bowed her head. "Sir, I used to clean your home a few years ago. My boy, he said the Lord sent him to help your daughter." Charles's jaw tightened. "Help her? You think this is some kind of game? My daughter is dying. I don't have time for nonsense." But before he could turn away, Malik spoke again, this time softly, but with words that made Charles freeze. "She's wearing a white nightgown," Malik said. "There's a pink bear beside her pillow. And the doctor said she has 1 day left." Charles's eyes widened. No one outside that room knew those details. He stared at the boy, his heart pounding. "Who told you that?" Malik looked up. "God did." For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the thunder outside. Charles wanted to dismiss it, to throw them out, but something in the boy's eyes stopped him. It wasn't arrogance or madness, it was peace. He sighed heavily. "Fine," he said. "Come in." "But if this is a joke." "It's not," Grace whispered. They walked through the mansion's golden halls until they reached Amelia's room. The nurses froze when they saw the poor woman and her son. Dr. Harris looked irritated. "Sir, who are these people?" "Just let the boy try," Charles said quietly. Malik stepped closer to the bed. Amelia's breathing was faint. He didn't look at the machines or the doctors, just at her. Then, he knelt beside the bed, closed his eyes, and took her cold hand in his small one. In a soft, trembling voice, he whispered, "Father in heaven, you gave her life once. Please, give it again." For a moment, nothing happened. The room was silent except for the rain outside. Then, suddenly, the lights flickered. A strange warmth filled the air, like sunlight breaking through the storm. The monitors beeped louder. A nurse gasped. "Her pulse, it's rising." Dr. Harris stared in disbelief. "That's impossible." Charles stepped forward, his heart racing. "Amelia? Can you hear me?" Then, slowly, her fingers moved. Charles fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "Oh my God, she's alive." The nurses stood frozen, some crying, others speechless. Malik didn't say another word. He just kept holding Amelia's hand, whispering a prayer of gratitude. That night, something beyond science had happened inside that mansion. But none of them knew. This miracle was only the beginning. The room was silent. No one dared to speak. The doctors stared at the monitors like they were staring at ghosts. Amelia's heartbeat was strong again, her breathing steady. It made no sense. Science had failed her, but something beyond it had just given her life back. Charles could barely speak. He held his daughter's hand, crying like a child. "Sweetheart, can you hear me?" Amelia's eyelids fluttered open. She blinked twice, her lips trembling as she whispered, "Daddy?" That single word broke him completely. He leaned down, kissing her forehead again and again. "Yes, baby, Daddy's here. Daddy's right here." Dr. Harris, still in disbelief, rushed forward to check the monitors again. Her oxygen was normal, heart rate stable. Every vital sign that had flatlined just an hour ago was now perfectly fine. It was as if her body had been reset. This isn't possible," he muttered. Her organs were collapsing. "There's no medical explanation, none." Charles turned toward Malik and his mother. How did you do that?" Malik looked down quietly. "It wasn't me, sir. It was him." He pointed upward gently. "He just asked me to come." Charles wanted to ask more, to demand an answer that made sense, but something inside him told him not to. Some things weren't meant to be explained, only believed. He took a deep breath and said, "You both saved my daughter's life. Whatever you need, whatever you want, it's yours." Grace shook her head quickly. "Sir, we didn't come for money." But Charles was already turning to his staff. "Prepare the guest wing. They'll stay here tonight. I don't care what time it is. I want them treated with the same respect as any member of my family." Grace tried to protest, but Charles simply said, "Please. It's the least I can do." That night, for the first time in months, Charles Kingsley slept peacefully. He stayed beside Amelia until she drifted off to sleep, her cheeks no longer pale, her breathing soft and steady. But Malik didn't sleep. He sat quietly near the window of the guest room, watching the lightning fade into dawn. His mother whispered, "Malik, you should rest." He shook his head. "It's not over yet, Mom." "What do you mean?" "The sickness, it didn't come from her body. It came from what surrounds her." Grace frowned. "What are you saying, baby?" He looked out at the mansion, the marble halls, the gold, the endless wealth. "There's darkness here, Mom. It hides behind their money, and it wants her back." Grace felt a chill run down her spine. "Don't say that." Malik looked at her with those deep, knowing eyes. "You'll see." The next morning, the entire mansion buzzed with joy. Nurses were smiling, the staff whispering about the miracle boy. Charles had already called the doctors again. Specialists from across the country were flying in just to witness the impossible recovery. News spread fast. By afternoon, reporters had already gathered outside the Kingsley gates, shouting questions and flashing cameras. "Is it true your daughter was healed overnight? Who is the boy everyone's talking about?" Charles ignored them all. He didn't want his daughter's recovery turned into a media circus. But inside, he couldn't stop thinking about that boy. When he entered the dining room, he saw Malik sitting quietly, eating pancakes with his hands, so shy, so humble. as if he didn't realize the world had just changed because of him. Charles sat across from him. "Malik," he said gently, "you saved my daughter. I owe you everything. Tell me what I can do for you and your mother. A new house? A scholarship? Anything you want." Malik looked up. "You don't owe me anything, sir. Just be kind. Be kind to people who can't give you anything back." Charles froze. Those words hit him harder than any business deal or negotiation ever had. He was a man who'd built empires, yet in that moment, he felt small in front of a 10-year-old boy. That same day, Amelia actually walked, down the hall. Her nurses were stunned. Just 24 hours ago, she couldn't even lift her head. Now she was smiling, laughing, full of color. Charles couldn't stop watching her, terrified it might vanish. But Malik seemed calm, always nearby, quietly observing. Later that evening, as Amelia drew pictures in her room, she looked up at Malik. "Did you really save me?" Malik smiled. "No, I just listened when he spoke." She tilted her head. "Who?" Malik pointed upward. "God. He loves you a lot." Amelia giggled. "He must love you too." Malik shrugged. Sometimes love means doing things that hurt. She didn't understand what he meant, but she liked his calm voice. For the first time, her laughter filled the house again. 3 days passed. Every test the doctors ran came back perfect. No signs of illness, no damage. The medical team called it a spontaneous remission, but deep down, everyone knew it was something else. One night, as Charles walked through the halls, he found Malik sitting in the garden, staring at the stars. He sat beside him and said, "You know, my daughter used to love sitting here before she got sick." Malik nodded. "She still does. But she shouldn't stay here too long." Charles frowned. "What do you mean?" Malik looked at him with a strange calm. "Sometimes money builds walls that even light can't pass through. Your house has everything, sir, except peace." Charles was silent. Malik turned to him. "You were angry at God when your wife died, weren't you?" Charles's breath caught. "How do you?" "She told me," Malik said softly, pointing toward the sky. Charles's eyes filled with tears. I lost faith. When Amelia got sick, I tried to control everything myself. I thought I could fix it with money." Malik nodded. "But God wanted your heart, not your wealth." Charles buried his face in his hands. "And I almost lost my daughter because of it." Malik smiled gently. "You didn't lose her. You just forgot who gave her to you." Those words hit Charles like thunder, not painful, but awakening. The next morning, Charles announced something no one expected. He gathered the media, his company board, and his entire household staff in the mansion's main hall. Cameras flashed as he said, "Money gave me power, but it couldn't save my child. A boy who owns nothing reminded me what true wealth really is: faith and kindness. From today, I'm donating half my fortune to children's hospitals around the world in my daughter's name." The room erupted in shock. Journalists whispered, staff gasped. Charles smiled and turned toward Malik. "This little boy reminded me that miracles still happen, and sometimes they come dressed in rags." But as applause filled the hall, Malik's smile faded. He looked toward Amelia's room upstairs, his eyes darkening slightly. Grace noticed. "Malik, what's wrong?" He whispered. "The darkness hasn't left yet. It's waiting." And before the night was over, the Kingsleys would learn that the miracle came with a price. The Kingsley mansion had never been so full of joy. For days, laughter replaced the sound of machines. Amelia played in the garden again, chasing butterflies like a child who'd been reborn. Everyone in the house smiled when they saw her. Even the maids whispered, "It's a miracle." But not everyone felt at ease. Malik hadn't smiled in days. His mother noticed him waking up at night, staring out the window, his eyes restless. "Malik," she whispered one night, "what's troubling you, son?" He hesitated, then said softly, "It's not done, Mom." Grace frowned. "What's not done?" The sickness was only a sign. Something darker caused it. "It's still here in this house." Grace felt a chill crawl up her neck. "You mean something evil?" Malik nodded slowly. "It doesn't like that Amelia's alive. It wants her back." Grace pulled him close, whispering a prayer. "You've done enough, baby. Let the Lord handle the rest." But Malik only looked out the window again, toward Amelia's room, where a faint light flickered against the curtain. That same night, Amelia woke suddenly, her heart pounding. The room was dark except for the soft glow of her night lamp. She rubbed her eyes and looked around. Then she saw it, a shadow standing near her window. At first, She thought it was her father. "Daddy," she whispered. But the figure didn't move. It was tall, silent, and cold. The air in the room grew heavy. "Who's there?" she said again, her voice trembling. The figure slowly turned its head toward her. For a second, she thought she saw two red eyes staring back. She gasped, hiding under her blanket. Then suddenly, her door opened. "Amelia?" Charles rushed in, turning on the light. The room was empty. No shadow. Nothing. He hurried to her side. "Sweetheart, what happened?" She clung to him, crying. "There was someone here, Daddy. By the window. I saw it." Charles looked around. Windows locked, curtains still. He forced a smile, trying to calm her. "It was probably a dream, my love. You're safe now." But when he turned to leave, Malik was standing silently in the hallway, watching. "You saw it too, didn't you?" Malik said quietly. Charles frowned. "Saw what?" "The darkness." Charles stared at him, confused and tired. "Son, I appreciate what you did for my daughter, but please, don't scare her with these things." Malik's voice stayed calm. "It's not her you should be scared for." Charles sighed and walked away, shaking his head. But later that night, he couldn't sleep. Those words echoed in his mind. "It's not her you should be scared for." Over the next few days, strange things started happening in the mansion. Lights flickered for no reason. The temperature in Amelia's room dropped suddenly at night. Once, one of the nurses swore she heard a whisper, a child's voice, soft but sad, saying, "It's not fair. It's my turn." Charles dismissed it all as nonsense, until the day the family portrait in the hallway shattered by itself. Amelia screamed when she saw it. The glass had cracked straight through her face in the painting. Grace pulled Malik aside, terrified. "You were right, baby. Something's wrong here." Malik's eyes were distant, almost as if he could hear something others couldn't. "It's angry," he said. "When I prayed that night, it left her body, but it didn't leave this place. It's bound here by pain." Grace looked shaken. "Bound? To what?" "To him," Malik said quietly. "To Mr. Kingsley." That evening, Charles found Malik sitting alone in the garden again. "You've been quiet," Charles said softly. "You can talk to me, son." Malik looked up, his eyes steady. "Do you believe in punishment, sir?" Charles hesitated. "What do you mean?" "Sometimes," Malik said, "when people hurt others with greed or pride, something gets born from that pain. It feeds on it." Charles frowned. "You're saying this darkness is my fault?" Malik didn't answer directly. "When your wife was sick, she prayed every night. But you didn't pray with her, did you?" Charles froze. "How do you know that?" Malik's gaze didn't waver. "Because she told me." Charles's face went pale. "She said you blamed God for taking her," Malik continued softly. "And that anger built a door. That's how the darkness came in." Charles swallowed hard, his voice cracking. "Are you saying my wife's death, my anger, caused all this?" Malik nodded. "You shut out the light, sir. And when the light leaves, something else always takes its place." Charles stood there in silence, unable to move. The truth hit him like a weight, heavy and real. That night, Amelia's condition changed again. Around midnight, her machines beeped erratically. She woke up gasping for air. "Daddy," she screamed. Charles ran in and froze. The room was ice cold, her breath visible in the air. The lights flickered. The curtains fluttered even though the windows were shut. And then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw it. A dark shadow crawling across the wall toward her bed. "No!" Charles shouted. He grabbed Amelia and held her close. "You can't have her." The lights went out completely. The room plunged into darkness. Amelia sobbed into his chest. "Daddy, it's here." Just then, Malik entered, holding a small wooden cross. His mother followed, praying under her breath. Malik's voice echoed through the darkness. "You can't take what doesn't belong to you." A deep, guttural sound filled the air, half growl, half scream. The walls shook. The shadow loomed taller. Grace shouted, "Malik, what do we do?" "Pray," Malik said firmly. He closed his eyes and began to speak softly. "Light of heaven, take back what was lost. Fill this place with peace." The sound grew louder, a roar that rattled every glass in the room. Charles held Amelia tightly, whispering, "Please, God, don't take her." Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The lights came back on. The air grew warm again. The shadow was gone. Amelia was breathing normally, her eyes wide but alive. Charles fell to his knees, shaking. "It's over, right?" But Malik didn't answer immediately. He looked exhausted, pale, his eyes half closed. Finally, he whispered, "No, sir. Not yet. The darkness isn't gone. It just changed who it wants." Charles's heart dropped. "Who?" Malik looked up slowly, his eyes full of tears. "You." Charles froze, speechless. The same man who'd faced the world without fear now felt smaller than ever. The thing that had haunted his daughter had only been waiting for the real target, him. Grace whispered, trembling, "Malik, what do we do now?" The boy took a deep breath. "Now, I have to finish what I started." And as the mansion grew silent again, a sense of dread filled the air. Because this time, the battle wouldn't be for Amelia's life, it would be for Charles's soul. The Kingsley mansion was silent that night, too silent. Even the wind seemed afraid to pass through its halls. Every shadow felt alive, every creak echoed like a whisper. Amelia slept peacefully again, unaware that her father's greatest fight was about to begin. Charles sat alone in his study, his face buried in his hands. His mind kept replaying Malik's words, "The darkness wants you." He had always thought of himself as untouchable. Power, money, and control had been his weapons. But now, all of that meant nothing. He looked around at his office, gold-framed portraits, expensive books, marble floors, everything he'd built through ruthless ambition. And yet, it all suddenly looked hollow. When the door creaked open, he didn't have to look up. He already knew who it was. Malik stepped inside quietly, holding the same small wooden cross. "You can't fight it alone," he said softly. Charles laughed bitterly. "I fought everything alone, boy. I built this empire from nothing. You think I'm afraid of my own house?" Malik shook his head. "No, but you're afraid of your past." Charles looked up, his eyes red. "You don't know anything about my past." Malik sat down across from him. "I know you prayed once. You prayed for your wife when she was sick. And when she died, you stopped talking to God. You thought he betrayed you." Charles stood up, his fists trembling. "I begged him. I cried. I promised I'd do anything. And he still took her." His voice broke. "Do you know what it's like to watch the only person you love slip away while you stand helpless?" Malik's eyes glistened. "Yes, I do. Because that's what God felt watching you." Charles froze. Malik continued, his voice calm but powerful. He watched his child, you, drift away in anger and pain. You shut him out. You filled the space he left with greed, pride, and fear. And that's where darkness found a home. Charles sank back into his chair, trembling. Tears streamed down his face. "I didn't mean to. I just wanted to forget the pain." Malik nodded slowly. "But pain doesn't disappear when we bury it. It becomes something else. That's what you've been seeing, your pain made real." At that moment, the lights flickered again. The air in the room grew cold. Charles turned slowly toward the fireplace and froze. The flames inside had turned black. A shape began to form within them, tall, shadowy, and faceless. It spoke with a voice that sounded like 100 whispers at once. "She's mine, Charles. You promised me her life, remember?" Charles stumbled backward, shaking. No, I never." Malik stood up, holding the cross out. "You did. In your anger. The night your wife died, you shouted to the heavens that you'd give anything, to bring her back. And the darkness heard you." Charles's knees buckled. He remembered that night. The storm, the bottle of whiskey, the scream that tore from his throat as lightning split the sky. He had said those words. "Take whatever you want, just don't take her." And something, or someone, had listened. The shadow laughed, a low, rumbling sound that shook the floor. "A deal made in pain cannot be undone." Malik's voice rose. "That's a lie. Love breaks every curse." The shadow hissed. "You think your light can touch me, little boy?" Malik didn't flinch. "It's not my light." The shadow lunged, the black flames swirling into a monstrous form. Malik raised the cross, his voice echoing through the mansion. "By the one who created all light, you have no power here." The windows shattered. The fire exploded, sending sparks across the room. Grace rushed in, screaming Malik's name. But the boy stood firm, his small body glowing faintly, not from the cross, but from something deep within him. Charles fell to his knees, weeping. "God, please. I'm sorry." As he cried, the walls seemed to pulse with light. The black shadow screamed, writhing, shrinking under the glow that now filled the room. Malik shouted, "Let go of what you owe, and he will set you free." Charles clasped his hands together, sobbing. I let go. I let go of everything. Take me, not her." The shadow paused, twisting, as if uncertain. Malik turned, his voice breaking. "No, sir. Don't say that." But Charles smiled weakly through tears. "It's time I pay for my mistake." The darkness let out a deafening roar, shooting upward like smoke pulled into a vacuum. The flames vanished. The house fell silent again. When the light faded, Charles was lying on the floor, breathing, but weak. Malik fell beside him, exhausted. Grace ran to her son, cradling him in her arms. "Malik, baby, wake up." He opened his eyes slowly. "It's done." Charles sat up, trembling. "What happened?" Malik smiled faintly. "You broke the promise." The darkness had no right to stay. Charles looked around. The room felt lighter, warmer. The heavy air that had haunted the mansion for years was gone. He could finally breathe. He turned to Malik, tears streaming down his cheeks. "How can I ever thank you?" Malik shook his head. "Don't thank me. Thank him." Charles took his hand and whispered, "Then may God bless you, son, for saving my family." But Malik didn't reply. His eyes were distant, his breathing shallow. Grace panicked. "Malik? Malik, say something." Charles knelt beside him, terrified. "What's happening to him?" Malik smiled faintly, his voice barely audible. "Sometimes, to bring back light, the candle has to burn out." Grace screamed, "No." But Malik's small hand slipped from hers, and his eyes slowly closed. For a moment, everything was still. Then, from somewhere unseen, a warm light filled the room once more. The air smelled like rain and lilies. And a voice, soft, gentle, full of peace, whispered through the silence. "Well done, my child." At sunrise, the mansion stood quiet. The storm was over. Amelia woke up happy and full of life, unaware that the boy who saved her had given more than anyone ever knew. Grace sat beside her son's still body, tears streaming down her face, but a strange peace surrounded her. She knew where he had gone, home. Charles stood by the window, the first sunlight touching his face. For the first time in years, he felt clean. He whispered softly, "Thank you." But this wasn't the end. Because 1 week later, something incredible happened. Something that made the world realize that miracles never truly die. The morning sun spilled gently across the Kingsley estate, washing over the gardens where silence had once ruled. Birds sang again, and even the roses seemed to bloom brighter than before. But inside the mansion, there was still one room where time had stopped. The small guest room where Malik once slept. Grace sat quietly beside his little bed, holding the wooden cross he'd carried everywhere. It was warm, though the morning air was cool. She traced its edges with trembling fingers and whispered, "You did it, my boy. You really did." Amelia came in softly, her golden hair tied with a blue ribbon. She climbed onto her mother's lap and rested her head on Grace's chest. "Mama, I dreamed of Malik again," she said. Grace looked down, her heart tightening. "You did, sweetheart? What did he say?" Amelia smiled, her eyes glowing. "He said I should keep smiling, because light doesn't die. It just goes home." Grace froze, tears filling her eyes. She kissed Amelia's forehead and held her close. The little girl had never spoken words like that before, not with that kind of peace. Across the hall, Charles Kingsley stared out of his office window, the same spot where darkness once whispered to him. But today, there was no darkness. Only light. Only stillness. He had changed. His expensive suits were gone, replaced with a simple gray sweater and jeans. His hair was uncombed, his eyes softer. For the first time in decades, he wasn't thinking about deals, profits, or empires. He was thinking about a boy who gave him back his soul. He walked to his desk and picked up a photo frame, one of him, Amelia, and Grace standing in the garden. Malik had been the one to take it just days before everything changed. Charles swallowed hard and whispered, "You saved her. You saved us all." The door opened, and Grace entered quietly. "The funeral is in an hour," she said gently. Charles nodded. "I know." He hesitated. "Do you think he knew that he wouldn't make it?" Grace looked down at the cross in her hand. "Yes," she said softly. But he wasn't afraid. Outside, the sky was clear, the air calm. When the funeral began, nearly everyone from the town came. Even the hospital staff who had once dismissed Grace as just another maid. The story of the boy who healed the billionaire's daughter had already spread. But none of them knew the full truth. None could imagine the darkness that boy had fought alone. The small white coffin was surrounded by flowers, mostly lilies and baby's breath. Grace stood beside it, her hands trembling. Amelia held her father's hand tightly, staring at the casket. "Why does he have to go underground?" she whispered. Charles knelt beside her. "Because, sweetheart," he said softly, "that's how seeds grow. Malik isn't gone, he's planted. One day, we'll see what blooms." Amelia smiled faintly. "Then he's the brightest seed ever." Grace couldn't stop her tears, but they weren't tears of sorrow anymore. They were tears of gratitude. When the priest finished the final prayer, something strange happened. A soft wind brushed through the garden, gentle but strong enough to lift the petals from the flowers. They rose into the air, swirling in a circle of light right above Malik's grave. People gasped. Amelia laughed, clapping her hands. "See? He's saying goodbye." Grace looked up through her tears and saw, just for a moment, a small figure standing in the sunlight at the edge of the garden. Malik, smiling. Then he faded into the light. Days passed. Weeks turned into months. The mansion transformed completely. Charles turned the entire West Wing into a children's hospital and named it the Malik Foundation for Miracles. It was free for every child in need, no matter who they were or where they came from. Grace became the director of the foundation, guiding it with kindness and humility. People from around the world donated after hearing the story of the little boy who saved a billionaire's daughter with nothing but faith. But it wasn't just charity that changed Charles, it was his heart. He prayed again. He forgave himself. He learned to smile like his daughter. One evening, nearly a year later, Charles walked into Amelia's room to kiss her goodnight. She was drawing in her sketchbook. "What are you working on, Angel?" he asked. She turned the page toward him. It was a drawing of a boy with curly hair and a bright smile, standing in a field of light. Above him, she'd written, "Malik, the boy who talked to angels." Charles's voice broke. "That's beautiful, darling." Amelia looked at her father. "Daddy, do you think he can see us?" Charles smiled gently. "I think he's right beside us, every time we do something kind. Every time we help someone who can't help themselves." Amelia nodded. "Then I'll help everyone I can, because that's what Malik would do." Charles kissed her forehead and whispered, "That's exactly what he'd do." That night, Charles went outside alone and sat on the same bench where Malik once fed the birds. The stars shimmered above, and for the first time, he felt like his wife was there too, smiling down on them. He closed his eyes and said softly, "I finally understand now. Love doesn't ask for anything. It just gives." At that moment, a single white feather drifted down from the sky and landed on his shoulder. He smiled and looked up, whispering, "Good night, Malik." A faint breeze brushed through the garden once more, and for a brief moment, it carried a child's laughter, light, joyful, eternal. Months later, the Malik Foundation for Miracles opened its doors. The first patient to be treated was a little girl from the city who had been told she'd never walk again. Grace watched from the doorway as Amelia knelt beside the girl, holding her hand. "You know," Amelia said softly, "my friend once told me that when you believe, the impossible becomes possible." The little girl smiled. "Did he really say that?" Amelia nodded. "He said faith is like a heartbeat. You can't see it, but it keeps you alive." Grace turned away, covering her mouth to hide her tears. As the doors of the foundation opened to the world, the golden letters above the entrance gleamed under the morning sun. Light never dies. And somewhere, beyond sight and sound, a small boy's voice whispered through the wind, "You kept your promise." If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit that like button, because your one click can help this message of faith and hope reach more people. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell, so you never miss another story that will move your soul and remind you that miracles still happen every day. And if you believe that light never dies, drop a like in the comments and share this video with someone who needs a little hope today.